They thought it was just an old sack tossed in the grass, until the cowboy's dog began barking wildly. When he ripped it open, his heart froze. Inside was a starving baby, whispering a single word through cracked lips. Mama. What followed left the whole town in shock. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The sun rose slowly over the endless stretch of golden fields, painting the horizon with warm shades of orange and gold. A soft breeze carried the scent of hay and dust, the kind of morning that felt timeless in the countryside. For most, it was just another quiet day, but for one cowboy, life was about to change forever. Mark adjusted his hat as he leaned against the wooden fence, watching over the cattle scattered lazily across the pasture. Beside him stood Rex, his loyal German shepherd, tail swaying gently as his sharp eyes scanned the land. The dog was more than a companion. He was a partner, a protector, and a friend. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful. Mark took a deep breath, grateful for the stillness. He didn't know it yet, but before the day ended, the serenity of this morning would be shattered in the most shocking way imaginable. Rex's ears twitched suddenly, his head snapping toward the far end of the field. The peaceful rhythm of the morning broke as a low growl rumbled from his chest. His body stiffened, tail raised, eyes locked on something invisible to Mark. The cowboy frowned, immediately sensing the shift. Rex never reacted without reason. Mark stepped forward, scanning the open land. To his eyes, there was nothing unusual, just swaying grass and the distant cries of crows. But Rex didn't budge. His paws dug into the dirt, muscles tense, as if warning Mark not to dismiss his instincts. The growl deepened, sharper now, echoing with urgency. "Easy, boy," Mark murmured, crouching beside him. But Rex's gaze remained fixed on a patch of tall grass, his nose twitching rapidly. He let out a sharp bark that sliced through the silence, startling the nearby cattle. Mark's pulse quickened. Something was there, something his loyal partner had sensed before him. With cautious steps, he followed Rex, each stride sinking into dry soil. The German shepherd tugged forward, almost dragging Mark along. The morning calm had turned heavy, and a strange unease settled over the cowboy. Whatever lay hidden ahead was about to change everything. Rex darted ahead, his barks echoing across the open field. Mark quickened his pace, heart thudding harder with every step. The dog stopped abruptly, standing rigid before a mound of dried grass. At first glance, it looked ordinary, just another patch of debris swept up by the wind. But then Mark saw it, a tattered burlap sack, stained and tied shut with rough rope. Mark froze, unease crawling up his spine. The sack shifted slightly, as if something inside had stirred. He swallowed hard, kneeling down with trembling hands. Rex stood guard, his growl low and steady, every hair on his back raised. The cowboy's fingers fumbled with the knot, dread pressing heavy on his chest. With a sharp tug, the rope loosened. Slowly, carefully, he pulled the sack open. What he saw made his blood run cold. Inside, wrapped in filth and straw, was a baby, tiny, fragile, its cheeks smeared with dirt and tears. The child let out a weak cry, the sound so faint it nearly broke Mark's heart. Rex whined, lowering his head beside the cowboy as if urging him to act quickly. The field wasn't hiding debris, it was hiding a life. Mark's breath caught in his throat as the child's tiny chest rose and fell unevenly. The baby's lips trembled, and through cracked, dry lips came a single, heartbreaking whisper, "Mama." The sound was so faint it barely carried through the air, but it struck Mark like a thunderclap. His hands shook as he pulled the infant closer, his mind racing with disbelief and urgency. Rex pressed forward, sniffing the baby gently, his usually fierce eyes softening. The German shepherd let out a low whimper, circling close as though shielding the fragile child from the world. Mark felt a lump rise in his throat. This was no ordinary discovery. It was a cry for life, for love, for survival against impossible odds. The cowboy held the child carefully against his chest, the baby's skin cold against his shirt. "Easy now. I've got you," he whispered, his voice cracking. The field around him seemed to vanish, silence pressing in. Only the baby's faint plea and Rex's protective stance reminded him that time was running out. Mark didn't waste another second. Clutching the frail infant tightly against his chest, he rose to his feet and sprinted toward town. Rex bounded beside him, his paws pounding the earth, barking urgently as if demanding the world to clear the way. Dust swirled with each hurried step, but Mark didn't slow. Every heartbeat of the child felt like a countdown. The baby whimpered softly, a pitiful sound that cut through Mark's soul. He adjusted his grip, tucking the child closer to his warmth, praying his body heat could lend the infant strength. "Hold on, little one," he muttered, breathless. "Just hold on." Rex ran ahead, pausing every few strides to glance back, guiding his master like a compass pulling them toward salvation. As Mark burst into the edge of town, people turned, gasps escaping their lips. A cowboy carrying a baby, his shirt stained with dirt and desperation, was a sight they could not comprehend. "Somebody get the doctor," he shouted, voice ragged with fear. Villagers rushed to his side, their eyes wide with shock, their hands covering their mouths. In that moment, the quiet town became a whirlwind of alarm, disbelief, and urgency. The townspeople cleared a path as Mark stormed into the small clinic, his boots striking the wooden floor like thunder. "Help! This baby, he's barely breathing," he cried, his voice breaking. The town's doctor, an older man with silver hair and tired eyes, rushed forward, motioning for Mark to lay the child on a cot. Nurses hurried in with blankets, water, and medical supplies. The doctor bent low, pressing a stethoscope against the tiny chest. His brow furrowed. "Malnourished, dehydrated, but still alive," he muttered, almost in disbelief. The baby's breathing was shallow, each rise and fall fragile as glass. Mark's fists clenched at his sides, helplessness gnawing at him as the doctor worked with practiced urgency. Rex whined from the doorway, pacing back and forth, his claws clicking against the floorboards. The dog's eyes never left the child, as if he understood the weight of every second passing. Villagers crowded the windows, whispering in shock, some with tears welling in their eyes. Finally, the doctor looked up, his expression grim yet hopeful. "This child survived something no infant should have. But if we hadn't gotten him here now," he trailed off, shaking his head, "he wouldn't have made it through the day." The sheriff arrived not long after, his boots heavy against the wooden floor as he entered the clinic. His sharp eyes swept over the room, settling on the fragile infant bundled in blankets. The whispers of the townsfolk filled the air, words like "abandoned" and "left to die," carrying a sting of outrage. Mark stood close to the cot, his hand resting lightly on Rex's back. He refused to move, his protective stance as fierce as the dog's. The sheriff questioned him quickly, but Mark's answers were simple. It was Rex who had found the child, Rex who had refused to leave the sack alone. The loyalty of the dog had uncovered a terrible truth. Outside, deputies searched the field for tracks, torn fabric, or any sign of who had abandoned the baby. The town buzzed with anger and sorrow, neighbors clutching each other as they tried to make sense of the cruelty. Yet through it all, the cowboy's eyes never left the child. He had stumbled upon a mystery, but more importantly, he had found a life worth protecting. Days later, the baby's cries grew stronger. No longer faint whispers, but healthy wails that filled the clinic with life. The townsfolk came bearing clothes, milk, and blankets, each offering a piece of hope. Mark never left the child's side, and Rex lay faithfully at the foot of the cot, watchful and proud. When the doctor finally declared both baby and Cowboy's dog heroes of the town, Mark made a quiet decision. He would raise the child as his own. The infant smiled faintly, eyes fluttering open, and whispered once more, "Mama." This time, it was not despair, it was hope.